You're sitting in a meeting. Someone across the table yawns. 3 seconds later, you yawn too. You didn't choose it. Your jaw just opened on its own, like a puppet string got pulled somewhere behind your eyes. You probably think it's boredom. It isn't. The real answer is far stranger. Yawning is one of the oldest behaviors your body performs. Fish do it. Dogs do it. Snakes, unhinging their jaws in slow motion, do it. Even unborn babies do it, curled up in total darkness inside the womb, weeks before they've taken a single breath of air on their own. So this isn't a habit you picked up from watching other people. It's a program written into you before you were born, before you had a name, before you had a single memory to explain it. Why would evolution bother keeping something around for that long? For decades, scientists assumed yawning was simple. Low oxygen, deep yawn, refill the lungs. It's a tidy story. It fits neatly into a biology textbook. It's also wrong. Researchers tested the idea directly decades ago. They had volunteers breathe pure oxygen in one session and air enriched with extra carbon dioxide in another, then carefully counted how often each person yawned. Nothing changed. Yawn rate stayed almost identical no matter what gas filled their lungs. The oxygen theory, the one you probably learned in school, quietly collapsed under its own data, and nobody ever went back and fixed the textbooks. So what is a yawn actually doing? The psychologist Robert Provini spent much of his career studying behaviors people perform without ever meaning to. Yawning became one of his favorites because it's involuntary, it's universal across cultures, and it spreads in a way almost nothing else does. Provini noticed something simple but important in his experiments. You are far more likely to yawn after watching video of someone else yawning than after reading the word yawn printed on a page in front of you. Watching a mouth stretch wide is enough to trigger the reflex. Your brain doesn't need language for this. It just needs a face. That contagious quality is the first real clue. A yawn moves through a room like a whisper pass from person to person. It jumps from stranger to stranger on a train. It moves from dog to owner. It has even been documented moving from human to chimpanzee, and from chimpanzee back to human, crossing a species boundary that almost nothing else about human behavior manages to cross. Something that spreads that easily in that many directions isn't random noise. It looks a lot more like communication. Ancient, wordless communication that predates every language you've ever spoken. Here's the second clue. Yawning doesn't happen evenly throughout your day. It peaks right after you wake up. It peaks right before you fall asleep. It shows up heavily during long stretches of low stimulation, the kind you feel in a slow lecture or a delayed flight. In other words, yawning appears exactly when your brain's internal state is about to shift gears. Not simply when you're tired in a general sense. Specifically when you're transitioning from one mode of alertness into another. The researcher Andrew Gallup pushed this observation further, and his answer is stranger than anything the oxygen theory ever offered. Gallup proposed that a yawn functions as a cooling system for your brain. Your skull is a tight, insulated space, packed with tissue that generates a surprising amount of heat. When you yawn, your jaw stretches wide, your eyes water, and blood flow to your face increases sharply for a few seconds. All three of those effects work together like a radiator, pulling warm blood away from your skull and cooling it down. A cooler brain runs more efficiently. A cooler brain reacts faster and thinks more clearly. Gallup tested this idea in a way that sounds almost too simple to actually work. He had participants hold either a warm compress or a cold compress against their forehead while watching videos of strangers yawning again and again. The people holding the cold compress yawned far less often. Their brains were already cool, so the reflex had nothing urgent to fix. The people holding the warm compress yawned constantly, chasing a relief that the compress alone couldn't give them. The pattern held up again when Gallup examined the data across seasons. People yawned less in the punishing heat of summer and less in the numbing cold of deep winter, and yawned most in the mild, in between temperatures where a brain cooling mechanism would actually make a measurable difference. Think about what that means. A yawn isn't a sign that you're running out of air. It's a sign that your brain is asking for tune-up. A quiet, automatic maintenance check built in long before you had any conscious control over your own body. Now, go back to the contagious part. Why would your brain care, even a little, about someone else's tune-up? Picture your ancestors, tens of thousands of years ago, sleeping together in a small group for protection against the dark. If one person's brain begins slowing down and drifting towards sleep, and everyone nearby happens to be watching, a shared yawn could act like a silent signal pass through the group. Time to rest together. Time to stay alert together, all at once, without a single spoken word. A yawn spreading from person to person wasn't laziness catching on. It was synchronization. A way for early humans to align their internal clocks with the people they depended on for survival. That may be why contagious yawning isn't evenly distributed among the people around you either. Provini, and researchers who built on his work afterward, found that you're far more likely to catch a yawn from someone you're emotionally close to than from a complete stranger. Family members yawn back at each other more than acquaintances do. Close friends yawn back more than coworkers. Coworkers yawn back more than strangers sitting across from you on a train. The closer the bond, the stronger the pull. That single fact quietly rewrites the whole story. A yawn isn't really about tiredness at all. At its core, it's about connection. Your brain is constantly, silently asking a question underneath your awareness. Who around me is actually part of my circle? And the answer shows up involuntarily in whether or not your jaw drops open in response to theirs. There's a colder mirror hiding in this research, too. The psychologist Ronald Baininger, along with several researchers who followed him, found that people who score lower on certain measures of empathy and social bonding are also less likely to catch a yawn from someone else. The contagious response, so automatic in most people, quietly weakens when the brain's social wiring runs differently. That single detail turns yawning into something closer to a hidden diagnostic tool than a simple bodily reflex. It's measuring how wired you are for connection every single day without ever asking your permission. So the next time a yawn moves through a room, actually watch what happens. Notice who catches it and who doesn't. Notice how it seems to skip over the one person sitting slightly apart from a group, the one who isn't quite folded into the circle yet. That isn't coincidence, and it isn't rudeness on their part either. That's your ancient social radar still quietly running in the background, exactly the way it did around a fire 50,000 years ago. There's one more piece of this worth sitting with. Yawning spikes sharply under stress, right before high-pressure moments, not after them. Athletes yawn in the tunnel seconds before a race begins. Musicians yawn in the wings right before walking into stage lights. Paratroopers yawn on the plane in the moments before they jump. None of them are bored in that instant. None of them are sleepy. Their brains are cooling themselves down under pressure, sharpening focus fast, preparing for the exact moment that matters most in their entire day. So a yawn during a slow, dull meeting and a yawn right before jumping out of an airplane are, biologically speaking, doing the exact same job. One of them just looks a great deal less dramatic than the other from the outside, which raises an uncomfortable question worth asking yourself honestly. How much of what you casually call boredom is actually your brain quietly overheating, running maintenance, trying to reset itself so it can pay attention again? Maybe the yawn isn't a symptom of you checking out. Maybe it's the tool your own body reaches for to fight against checking out. A built-in reboot button firing every single time your focus starts to slip away from you. That reframes something you've probably felt your whole life without ever once examining it closely. You always assumed a yawn meant you'd already given up on the moment. It might be the opposite. It might be your brain's last real attempt to keep you present inside it. Think about how often this plays out on an ordinary night. You're scrolling through your phone, half paying attention, the blue light washing over your face in the dark. Your jaw stretches wide, almost without your noticing. You barely register it as anything at all, but somewhere behind your eyes, your brain has just quietly flagged that your focus is slipping, and it has fired off its oldest tool to try to pull you back. The scroll continues anyway. The yawn loses. It was never really about the meeting or the lecture or the late-night feed. It was always about a brain trying to hold on to you. There's a small, strange comfort tucked into that idea. Your body has been quietly managing your attention for you this entire time, long before you had language for focus or burnout or overstimulation or any of the words you now reach for to describe a tired mind. It built a tool for temperature regulation deep in your evolutionary past, and it repurposed that same tool into a signal for connection, a warning system for fatigue, and a silent bridge stretched between minds sitting close together in the dark. You didn't design any of this yourself. You inherited it, fully assembled, from a line of ancestors stretching back further than written history can even reach. A behavior older than your species, quietly synchronizing you with the people you're closest to, one open mouth at a time, every single day of your life. So tonight, when you're finally winding down and you feel that familiar stretch pulling at your jaw, pay attention to who's sitting near you. Notice if anyone yawns back. That small, involuntary echo isn't nothing. It's ancient. It's automatic. It's your brain, still speaking a wordless language it never actually stopped using, quietly asking the room a question it's been asking for 50,000 years. Are you with me?